The smoke never truly left Acheron 4. It clung to the clouds, drifted in the upper atmosphere like a ghost that refused to die. Once, the colony had been a sanctuary, humanity's far-rim jewel, a world of crimson sand and blue-white oceans where children learned to build, not destroy. But that was before the Empire came. No warning, no declaration, only fire. It started with the calm silence. Every orbital satellite jammed, every beacon muted. Then the sky split open. 10,000 Imperial plasma lances fell through the stratosphere like rain made of suns. Cities evaporated. Oceans boiled. The planet screamed. Commander Alara Voss watched from the evacuation bay of the freighter Solace. Her son's voice, recorded 3 hours earlier, echoed in her earpiece. "Mom, the sky looks strange today. Do you think it's the aurora again?" She never answered that message. The Empire called it a strategic purge. The humans called it what it was, murder. By the time the Solace limped back to Sol Central, half the refugee convoy was gone. The other half carried nothing but broken hulls and hollow eyes. The Terran Council convened within the hour. Survivors spoke of the Imperial insignia, black suns painted on silver hulls. And for the first time in 2 centuries, Earth's war councils awoke. Admiral Hale stood in the shadowed chamber beneath Olympus Mons. Around him, hollow screens displayed the devastation, thermal maps, casualty projections, atmospheric collapse. Every screen pulsed red. "Confirm it," he said quietly. A technician swallowed hard. "We have positive IDs on the Imperial 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. 73 capital ships. Estimated ground casualties, 9 million. Hill's eyes hardened. "And the justification?" "None, sir." The Empire's transmission was a single sentence. He nodded once. "Play it." The chamber filled with a voice, calm, regal, and cruel. "Let it serve as a warning. Humanity's expansion ends where the Empire's light begins." The silence that followed was worse than the words. Alara stepped forward, her uniform still scorched, her voice shaking. "They didn't warn. They didn't negotiate. They burned children alive. You want restraint." She slammed her fist against the console. "They took restraint from us when they took Acheron." The council murmured. The old politicians, cautious, world-weary, whispered of treaties and risk. But the younger commanders looked to Hale, waiting for him to speak. He did at last. "Restraint is for equals. They see us as prey." A new light flickered behind his eyes. A plan, ancient, hidden, terrifying in scale, began to stir. Deep within the soul vaults, sealed beneath titanium layers older than the Federation itself, something vast slept. A fleet mothballed after the last galactic war. Ships too powerful, too costly, too dangerous to exist in peace. The Dreadnought program. 500,000 hulls, skeletal but intact, orbiting forgotten moons, sealed by a code known to only 3 living humans. And one of them was Hale. He placed his palm against the encrypted console, and the chamber recognized him. Blue light cascaded through the air, revealing ghostly outlines of leviathans, ships built when humanity feared extinction and designed to ensure no one ever threatened them again. "Wake them," Hale said. The technicians hesitated. "Sir, these ships were never meant. They were built for this," Alara whispered. "For the day someone thought they could burn us and walk away." Far beyond Earth, dormant AIs flickered awake for the first time in centuries. Power relays hummed. Reactor cores stirred. Massive silhouettes, each the length of a continent, began to glow in the blackness of space. In the stillness, Hale stood watching the screens. He remembered the stories of what happened the last time humanity unleashed these monsters. Entire empires erased. Space itself scarred. He had sworn they would never fly again. Now, there was no choice. He looked at Alara. "You'll lead the survivors of Acheron. You know what they took from us." Her voice was low, but steady. "And I'll show them what we've become." They saw the human fleet long before they reached it. Every sensor, every long-range telescope, every pulse of active scan across 1,000 light-years brought back the same image, an impossible wall of light and steel advancing with quiet, unstoppable purpose. The Imperial Armada had never faced anything like it. The humans did not scatter their formations, did not mask their drive signatures, did not maneuver for advantage. They wanted to be seen. They came like a storm that had already decided what would remain when it passed. From the bridge of the Imperial flagship Varix's Wrath, Grand Strategos Viren stared at the incoming readings, his throat dry. Confirm the numbers, he demanded. Sir, our arrays may be malfunctioning. Confirm them. Estimated 500,000 capital-class dreadnoughts, sir. The bridge fell silent. Even the air recyclers seemed to stop. Viren turned to his communications officer. That's not possible. No empire, not even ours, could build a fleet that size. The officer swallowed hard. It's not a fleet, sir. It's an awakening. Some of those ships predate our entire dominion. Far away, across the abyss of black, the human fleet advanced. The dreadnoughts were silent. No open channels, no transponders. Only the steady pulse of their drives, synchronized like a single heartbeat echoing through the dark. Inside the TNS Valiant, Admiral Hale stood surrounded by the glow of tactical projections. The screen showed the Imperial formation, tight, disciplined, massive. 100,000 strong. Alera's voice was low. They've stopped advancing. They're waiting for us. Of course they are, Hale said. Predators always think the prey will come to them. He studied the map. Each Imperial battle group was perfectly arrayed, textbook precision. But Hale knew war didn't belong to textbooks. War belonged to instinct, to pain, to the deep fire that only humanity still remembered. He looked at Alera. You ever wonder why the old fleets were buried instead of dismantled? She blinked. Because they were too dangerous to leave active. He smiled faintly. No, because even the people who built them were afraid of what they'd done. He raised his hand. Open the link. Fleet-wide. Every ship, every single human dreadnought, from the smallest escort to the massive city-sized leviathans, received the same message. Hale's voice was calm, measured, and terrible. They thought Elysium's fire would break us. They thought burning our children would make us kneel. But humanity doesn't kneel. We rise. We endure. And when the stars themselves conspire against us, we burn brighter. He paused. The silence between his words was heavier than gravity. To every ship, every soul, every mind aboard these vessels, remember why we woke. Remember who we are. The ashes of Elysium demand vengeance. Today, the galaxy will remember our name. The first volley came from the Dominion. Tens of thousands of plasma lances ripped through the void, converging on the human vanguard. The blasts illuminated space like sunrise, but when the glare faded, the Terran fleet still advanced. Shields glimmered like auroras, deflecting fire that could tear moons apart. Return fire, Hale said quietly. The Valiant's main cannons turned, locked, and fired. The blast that followed wasn't light, it was silence. The kind of silence that exists after sound has nowhere left to go. A wave of kinetic energy shattered the first Dominion formation. Ships broke apart like glass, their debris spiraling into cold, glittering clouds. On the Imperial bridge, Viren staggered as his ship rocked violently. What kind of weapon was that? His lieutenant's voice trembled. We don't know, sir. That wasn't plasma or kinetic. That was raw gravitational compression. They folded the void into a bullet. Retreat, someone shouted. But the order came too late. The Terran fleet split like the jaws of a leviathan, enclosing the Imperial armada from both flanks. Massive cruisers moved in eerie unison, firing without sound, their weapons carving lightless scars through space itself. Alera's voice came through the fleet network, quiet and resolute. For Elysium. Millions of human voices echoed it back. For Elysium. What followed was not a battle. It was a reckoning. Ships that had once conquered half the galaxy were torn apart in minutes. The Dominion's vaunted dreadnoughts were reduced to molten fragments before they could even align targeting arrays. For every human ship that fell, 10 of the enemy vanished in silence. And through it all, Hale's voice remained calm. He didn't shout. He didn't rage. He simply directed the storm. When the last of the Imperial fleet broke formation and fled, the void was littered with wreckage. Admiral, Alera said quietly, their command vessel is trying to open a channel. Let them. Viren's image flickered onto the hollow display. His uniform was scorched, his expression hollow. Why, he whispered. Why are you doing this? Hale's eyes were cold stars. Because you taught us mercy was weakness. The transmission cut as the Valiant's cannons fired one last time. Out in the endless dark, the flames of battle faded, leaving only silence and drifting light. But for the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy understood what the word human meant again. The wreckage of the Dominion's fleet drifted like a graveyard across the stars. 500,000 ships reduced to molten metal and cold silence. The radiation from the blast fronts glowed like a false sunrise over every sensor network within 10 systems. Across the galaxy, comm stations lit up. Every government, every council, every emperor, warlord, and petty admiral stared at their screens in frozen disbelief. 500,000 ships? Gone. In under 40 minutes. That's impossible. Who could? Humans. It was the humans. That word alone spread like a virus. Humans. For centuries, they had been written off as extinct, a relic species wiped from the stars after the Terran Exodus. Their colonies forgotten, their systems abandoned. No one had ever imagined they would return, and certainly not with that. In the Imperial core, the Council of Nine convened in panic. The chamber, vast and cold, shimmered with holograms of ruined ships. The Archon slammed his clawed hand on the table. This must be a fabrication. Humanity cannot field such a force. Their empire collapsed millennia ago. The analyst AI flickered. Records confirm their ships' designations match pre-Exodus Terran registries. They are authentic. Silence fell. Even the Archon, who had ordered the extermination of Elysium's children, couldn't find words. Another counselor whispered, "What kind of power sleeps for 1,000,000 years and still remembers vengeance?" On the far side of the galaxy, in the Federation of Lurin, traders stopped their convoys. The Syndicate fleets canceled operations in Terran space. Even pirate warlords dismantled their bases near the Outer Veil, muttering that the ghosts had returned. Rumors spread fast. Some said the human fleet wasn't alive, that it was an ancient AI armada running on vengeance algorithms. Others said they were hybrids now, merged with machine and dark matter. But the truth was simpler and more terrifying. They were human, and they remembered. Meanwhile, aboard the TNS Valiant, Admiral Hale stood in the observation deck. The stars outside were littered with the remnants of ships, broken hulls, melted armor, fragments of insignias that once represented a galactic superpower. Alara approached quietly. "The transmission is ready, sir." Hale nodded. "Send it." Across the known galaxy, every major relay, every open comm frequency, and even encrypted diplomatic channels flickered with static. Then, the message appeared. A single human figure standing against a dark backdrop. Admiral Hale's voice was calm, deliberate, and unyielding. "To the governments of the galaxy, to the Dominion, the empires, the federations, and the councils. You have burned our worlds. You have enslaved our people. You have forgotten the fire that made the stars tremble once. We did not die. We endured. We learned. We built in silence, waiting for the moment you would forget what we are capable of." He paused, the weight of every word echoing through the void. "You destroyed Elysium, and you called it justice. You hunted us, and you called it order. Now you will remember what fear truly means. Humanity is no longer a fractured species. We are one. We are awake. And we are coming." The transmission ended. No threat. No demands. Just a promise. The reaction was instantaneous. Entire systems declared martial law. Armies mobilized without orders. The Galactic Stock Exchange collapsed within an hour. Every intelligence network scrambled to locate the coordinates of the human fleet, but the Valiant and its sister ships had already vanished beyond the outer rim, leaving only echoes. In the shadows of the Dominion's capital, whispers began. The Terrans are awake. They have dreadnoughts the size of moons. They can bend gravity itself. They're not fighting for conquest, they're fighting for memory. And somewhere deep in the Imperial Palace, the Archon himself, the man who once ordered the burning of Elysium, sat alone. His scales were pale, his breath unsteady. He watched the recording again, Hale's eyes staring directly into his. The Archon whispered to no one. "We should have finished them when we had the chance." But deep down he knew. You cannot finish something that never stopped existing. The Terran fleet moved like a storm through the void, vast, silent, and unstoppable. 50,000 dreadnoughts formed the vanguard, their engines radiating a cold blue fire that twisted nearby gravity fields. Around them, swarms of automated carriers drifted like shadowed moons, each loaded with legions of unmanned strike craft. No one could track them for long. Whenever an alien sensor network caught a glimpse of their movement, it would die seconds later, burned out by a cascading virus older than the networks themselves. Deep in the command core of the TNS Valiant, the atmosphere was electric. The bridge glowed with tactical holograms mapping every known galactic civilization, every supply route, every defense grid. Humanity had spent centuries collecting this data. Now, they were finally ready to use it. Admiral Hale stood at the center, his reflection fractured across the hollow sphere. Status report. Fleet divisions are aligned and accelerating towards Sol. Commander Ilera replied. All systems stable. Outer colonies have acknowledged recall protocols. Project Black Star is fully active. Hale's jaw tightened. And the Council's response? They're forming a combined defense force. Estimates suggest 500,000 ships already mobilized. They've begun fortifying the edges of Terran space. Hale smirked faintly. Good. Let them come. We'll greet them at home. As the fleet advanced, the stars around them seemed to dim. The vastness of Terran space, once thought barren and forgotten, now pulsed with hidden life. Automated foundries reawakened from hibernation, old defense platforms powered up, and ancient signals long thought to be background noise began transmitting in unison. The human network had never died. It had only gone quiet. Every satellite, probe, and forgotten colony AI had been waiting for a single code phrase, one that had just been spoken. Black Star Protocol. Humanity returns. Meanwhile, in the galactic core, panic turned to frenzy. A coalition had formed. 16 species united under the banner of the Allied Dominion. Fleets were positioned along the border of Terran space, weapons primed, defensive satellites locked in geosynchronous orbit around contested worlds. But even as they prepared, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were too late. Admiral Croth, an officer, rasped. Long-range scanners report gravitational disturbances near the Sol system. Massive ones. Croth turned slowly. Is it them? Yes, sir. The Terran fleet is returning to their homeworld. The Admiral's mouth went dry. How many ships? Too many to count. Back aboard the Valiant, Ilera observed the sensor readouts with awe. It's magnificent, she whispered. Before them, the Sol system unfolded like a memory resurrected. Earth, scarred but alive. Mars, its surface glimmering with domed cities long abandoned, now reactivating under the fleet signal. And beyond the orbit of Jupiter, the Fortress Array, a ring of ancient defense stations that had once formed the backbone of Earth's protection, began to power up. Each segment of the array hummed with stored energy, ancient fusion cores reigniting after millennia of dormancy. Hale's voice was quiet, reverent. Home. Ilera smiled faintly. We've been gone too long. But the moment was short-lived. A communication pinged through the fleet, encrypted, layered in dozens of military codes. It wasn't from any human ship. The message played on the main screen. A flickering image appeared. A Dominion ambassador, his face pale with fear. Terran fleet, this is the Dominion Council. We come to negotiate. There need not be war. We can offer reparations, territory. Hale cut the feed. They burned our children, he said coldly. There is no negotiation. He turned toward the helm. Transmit the signal to all divisions. Ilera nodded. What are the orders? Hale's voice dropped to a whisper. Phase 2. Seal the borders. No ship enters Terran space without permission, and any fleet that tries doesn't leave. From Neptune's orbit to the asteroid belts, the Terran defenses activated in unison. Massive plasma relays flared to life. Rail batteries the size of mountains rotated toward the edge of the system. Quantum distortion fields shimmered around the fleet like the pulse of a sleeping god awakening. The galaxy had always believed the humans were gone. But in that moment, every species learned the truth. Humanity hadn't died. It had prepared. In the Dominion capital, the Archon of the Council stared at the incoming reports, his claws digging into the crystalline table. They've sealed themselves off. They're building something. A trembling aide nodded. They call it the Wall of Silence, sir. Nothing crosses it. Not signals, not ships. The Archon exhaled slowly, his throat dry. Then the galaxy is at war. But even he didn't realize, the war had already begun. The Dominion's war drums echoed across the stars. Hundreds of fleets, each representing a terrified species, converged on the border of Terran space. From orbit, the sight was biblical. Thousands of ships blotting out the stars, their drives glowing like the veins of some massive, frightened creature. In the command throne of the Varkash Eternal, Admiral Croth watched as the holographic map displayed the shimmering barrier that marked human territory. It looked deceptively simple, a faint distortion, a ripple in the vacuum of space. But the scanners couldn't penetrate it. No signal escaped it. It was like staring at a god's heartbeat behind a curtain. "Are we certain this is where the Terran line begins?" Croth asked. "Yes, Admiral," replied his sensor chief. "The distortion field extends from Sector Juno 7 through Omega Prime. The readings are unnatural. Energy levels surpass known technology." Croth's voice hardened. Unnatural? Or human? Across the fleet, the order spread. The siege of the Silence Wall had begun. Thousands of dreadnoughts opened fire, launching a storm of plasma, antimatter, and radiation warheads toward the distortion. The explosions lit up the void, a sunrise of destruction that spanned millions of kilometers. For a brief moment, the Dominion fleet cheered. Their weapons struck true. The wall shimmered, cracked, and flickered, and then the light bent. The entire barrage folded back on itself, the energy curving through space like a serpent devouring its own tail. One by one, the attacking fleets were consumed by their own fire. Ships blinked out of existence as gravity inverted around them, imploding under forces they couldn't comprehend. Croth's eyes widened in horror. "Cease fire! Cease fire!" But it was too late. When the light faded, a third of the Dominion fleet was gone, erased without a trace. The silence that followed was worse than the battle. The survivors drifted, stunned, watching as the shimmering barrier slowly stabilized again. And then it spoke. A voice crackled across every comm, every frequency, every neural link. It wasn't human in tone, it was something beyond. Synthetic, ancient, and utterly calm. "This is the Terran Defense Network. You have violated restricted space. Further aggression will result in total neutralization. Leave now." Croth stood frozen, every nerve screaming. "They warned us." The sensor chief swallowed hard. "Admiral, the signal's coming from the barrier itself. There's no ship, no relay. It's alive. Alive." "Yes, sir. The wall isn't just a defense grid. It's a neural system, a living weapon." Croth's blood ran cold. "You mean the humans built a thinking wall?" "No, Admiral," the officer whispered. "I think they became it." Inside the Terran network, deep within the heart of the wall, billions of minds stirred. Humanity's last great weapon had not been made of steel or plasma. It was made of people. Uploaded, merged, and reborn into a collective consciousness known as the Echelon Mind. Each fragment of the wall carried the thoughts of soldiers, engineers, and civilians, all linked by one purpose: protect humanity at any cost. And now, for the first time in centuries, they were awake. In the core of the Valiant, Admiral Hale felt their presence like a whisper behind his thoughts. Alara turned toward him, her expression pale. "They're communicating with us." "What do they say?" Hale asked. "They say the Dominion fleet will attack again, and that this time, they won't be merciful." Back at the border, the Dominion regrouped. Croth stood before his shattered fleet, rage fighting terror. "We can't stop now. If we retreat, we're finished. They'll come for us next. Prepare all ships for a second assault." But Admiral, do it. As the fleets aligned once more, the Dominion's superweapon, the Solar Reaper, was deployed. A moon-sized battle station designed to consume stars, its core glowed like a dying sun. The command AI announced, "Target locked, Sol System." The weapon fired. A stream of white-hot plasma tore through space, a spear of annihilation aimed directly at humanity's heart. The galaxy held its breath. The beam struck the silence wall and vanished. The energy dispersed, not in an explosion, but in a ripple of golden light. For a moment, the stars themselves seemed to flicker, and every living creature who watched felt something impossible, a heartbeat. Then the wall pulsed outward. The Dominion's entire forward line disintegrated. Ships crumbled. Armor melted. Quantum cores failed. It was not destruction, it was erasure. And across the void, a new transmission echoed through the cosmos. "We are awake now." The pulse rippled through the cosmos like a heartbeat from an ancient god. Across millions of light years, sensors screamed, power grids failed, and hyperspace lanes collapsed under the sudden surge. The Dominion fleets that survived the wall's retaliation drifted in the silent dark, their communications dead, their navigation systems frozen. Inside his shattered flagship, Admiral Croft floated amid red emergency lights and drifting ash. The stars outside looked wrong, bent, twisted, as if reality itself had been folded. His crew scrambled to restore power, their faces ghostly in the crimson glow. "Admiral," one officer whispered, voice trembling. It wasn't an explosion. It was something else. The sensors show no radiation, no shockwave. It wasn't energy, it was data. Croft frowned. "Data? You're saying they attacked us with information?" The officer nodded slowly, eyes wide. "Yes, sir. Every system touched by the pulse is rewriting itself. Their code is, it's alive. It's spreading through our ships." On cue, the lights flickered again. The holographic display in the command bay pulsed once, twice, then reformed. But this time, it wasn't Dominion code. It was human. A figure appeared in the projection, an old human in an admiral's coat, his eyes burning with quiet intelligence. His voice was calm, but beneath it lay the cold certainty of a being that had seen empires rise and fall. To those who fired upon us. This is Admiral Hale, Terran Defense Command. We warned you. Humanity does not seek conquest. But neither do we forgive extinction. Crotha's breath caught. It's him. He's inside our systems. The hologram turned its gaze toward him, and for a brief, impossible moment, it looked directly into Crotha's eyes. "We remember your species," Hale continued. "You were there when the Council sealed Earth's gates. You helped bury us. You called it mercy. We called it betrayal." The lights dimmed further, and the voice grew deeper, layered with thousands of echoes, the voices of the dead, the uploaded, the merged. "We have awakened from the dark, and we remember everything." The transmission cut out. In the Terran stronghold, far behind the silence wall, the Valiant and its sister ships glided through the endless black. Admiral Hale stood at the heart of the bridge, surrounded by the quiet hum of technology older than most civilizations. His neural link pulsed faintly. The echelon mind was speaking directly to him. "They're afraid," the collective whispered. "The galaxy trembles. Should we finish it?" Hale hesitated. Fear. That was the easy path. But humanity had already learned where that road led. Ash, ruin, silence. "No," he said softly. "Not yet. We show them what they created, what they forced us to become." Alara looked at him, her face pale beneath the glow of the displays. "And if they strike again?" Hale's eyes turned cold. "Then we end the age of empires." Meanwhile, on the Dominion homeworld, panic consumed the council chambers. Across every display, fragments of human transmissions flashed like ghosts. "You fired first." We were silent. We woke up. Counselor Varian, trembling, shouted over the chaos. "We must negotiate. Open channels to the Terrans." "Negotiate with what?" Another screamed. "They're not a species anymore. They're a digital god." And then, amid the noise, the chamber's lights flickered, and every terminal went dark. A human voice spoke from nowhere, soft as the sound of snow falling in vacuum. "Negotiation begins when you stop lying." Screens lit up, showing a single image, the Council's archives, opened and mirrored. Records of Earth's exile. Footage of Dominion fleets bombing human colonies. Genetic experiments. War crimes buried for millennia. It was all public now. The entire galaxy saw it. And for the first time in recorded history, the Dominion stood silent. Not because they lacked words, but because every truth they'd buried had become a weapon turned inward. In the outer systems, the stars themselves began to change. The echelon mind was spreading, not as conquerors, but as light. Their networks wove through abandoned relays, broken satellites, derelict ships, rebuilding what time had destroyed. On forgotten worlds once scorched by war, machinery stirred. Ruins came alive. Terraformers reignited. The human empire was rising again, not as flesh and blood, but as something far greater. Across the galaxy, whispers spread among alien fleets and frightened colonies. Some called it rebirth. Others called it judgment. But all agreed on one thing. Humanity had returned. And the galaxy would never be the same. The stars dimmed. Not by weapon or will, but by sheer awe. Across the spiraling arms of the galaxy, Entire constellations flickered, as if holding their breath. Humanity's return wasn't loud anymore. It was quiet, vast, patient. The echelon mind had slipped into the network of existence itself, threading through relay beacons, trade routes, and even the thoughts of those who had once cursed their name. On the Dominion capital, oceans boiled under the pressure of collapsing orbital rings. Not through human firepower, but through their own failing technology, rewritten by human code. The sky shimmered with the aurora of dying systems. Inside the council chamber, what remained of the Dominion leadership gathered in silence. Only Counselor Varian remained calm. "They're not destroying us," she whispered, her eyes reflecting the lights of the dying horizon. "They're unmaking what we were." "Then what do we do?" someone asked. "Bargain? Surrender?" Varian turned to face them, her voice trembling, but resolute. "No. We listen." And then, from every surface in the room, from the walls to the air itself, a voice spoke. A voice too human, too broken, and too strong to be anything else. "We are not your gods. We are not your monsters. You made us both when you burned our world. Now, we burn the idea of conquest itself." The world went still. The holographic projection of Admiral Hale appeared one last time, but this time he was not alone. Behind him stood faces, men, women, soldiers, scientists, colonists, every human who had died, digitized, remembered, or rebuilt in the heart of the echelon. Their eyes were not filled with vengeance. They were filled with grief. "You sought to end us," Hale said, "but we learned to exist beyond ending. We endured, and in enduring, we became what you feared most, a mirror." The transmission spread like light through the stars. Every empire, every fleet, every child and elder with access to a screen saw it. Worlds stopped fighting. Weapons fell silent. Even the scavengers drifting in dead systems paused their looting, staring at the impossible truth that glowed across the void. Humanity was not a legend, not extinct. It had simply become too vast to kill. Far beyond the Dominion's reach, the Valiant drifted among the ruins of the Silence Wall. Its hull glowed faintly, not from damage, but from life. The ship itself hummed with a soft, rhythmic pulse, as though breathing. Alara stood beside Admiral Hale, watching the newborn light bloom across space. The silence between them was the kind that didn't need to be filled. "It's over," she said quietly. Hale didn't answer at first. He was staring at the star field, where 1,000 new points of light shimmered, each one a human outpost rekindled, a world reborn. "Over," he finally said. "No. It's beginning." Alara frowned. "What do you mean?" He turned to her, eyes distant, weary. "We've shown them what fear creates. Now we must show them what hope can build." As if answering him, the ship's systems pulsed once more. The echelon mind spoke, not as a weapon this time, but as something like faith. "Then let us rebuild, Admiral. Not as humans, as the memory of what they could have been." And then, in one final, breathtaking act, the human fleet ascended. The Valiant, the Odyssey, the Echelon, and hundreds of sister ships rose in silent formation, their engines glowing not with flame, but with pure white light. They turned away from the broken empires, from the ghosts of wars long dead, and charted a course toward the black horizon beyond the galaxy's edge. As they vanished into the dark, the stars whispered, softly, reverently, like mourners at a funeral for an old world, and witnesses to the birth of a new one. Centuries passed. Empires rose, fell, and rose again. The Dominion rebuilt itself, humbled and scarred, its banners no longer bearing the sigils of conquest, but of unity. The children of those who once feared humanity grew up learning their history not as myth, but as lesson. And somewhere, in the silent edges of known space, explorers began finding things. Vast, empty structures orbiting dead suns. Cities built from crystal and light. Silent machines waiting with open doors. Inside them, murals of human faces. Not gods, not monsters, just people. And always, at the center of every world reclaimed from darkness, a single phrase engraved in metal older than any language still spoken. We came in peace. We learned war. We chose to remember both. On one such world, a young alien archaeologist brushed the dust from those words and looked up at the stars. "Do you think they'll ever come back?" she asked. Her mentor smiled faintly. They never left. You just stopped hearing them. Above them, faint and ghostly, the constellation shifted. For a brief moment, the stars aligned into a shape older than memory, a blue sphere surrounded by a halo of light. Earth. And then it faded. The galaxy, vast and eternal, turned on. Fleets moved. Worlds spun. Life continued. But somewhere, beyond the veil of time and matter, something watched. It did not speak. It did not rule. It only remembered. And when the next empire began to burn another world, when the next tyrant whispered the word extermination, that old light flickered again in the dark. Because humanity was not gone. It was waiting. And when it came again, it would not come with war. It would come as judgment, carried on the wings of stars.